Join me as I dive deep into the tricky world of social pressure and see if I can resist the urge to conform in a series of real-life challenges. Social pressure to conform is something we've all experienced at some point or another. Whether it's feeling like we need to fit in with a certain social group or conforming to societal norms, it's a force that can be incredibly hard to resist. But have you ever stopped to think about why we feel this pressure and what it means for our individuality and decision-making? So, when we talk about social pressure, what's really at the heart of the issue? Well, for one thing, it can be incredibly damaging to our sense of self. When we conform to the expectations of others, we can lose sight of who we are and what we truly believe in. We start to make decisions based on what others think we should be doing, rather than what we think is right for ourselves. And that can lead to some pretty negative consequences, from feelings of anxiety and self-doubt, to making choices that go against our own values and principles. Another major issue with social pressure is that it can stifle our creativity and innovation. When we're too afraid to stand out from the crowd or try something new and different, we miss out on the opportunity to bring fresh ideas and perspectives to the table. And that's not just bad for us as individuals, it's also bad for society as a whole. Think about it. Some of the most groundbreaking discoveries and advancements in history came from people who were willing to challenge the status quo and defy convention. But here's the thing. Social pressure isn't just about individual conformity. It's also about groupthink and the way that groups can come to adopt a certain way of thinking or behaving without ever questioning whether it's truly the right thing to do. And that's when we start to see some really negative consequences, from minority groups being oppressed or marginalized, to entire societies being held back by outdated beliefs and attitudes. So what drives us to conform to social pressure, and why do we find it so hard to resist? Well, psychologists have been studying this phenomenon for decades, and one of the most famous experiments of all time has to be the Ash Conformity Experiments. In these experiments, participants were shown a series of lines and asked to identify which one was the longest. The catch was that a group of actors were also participating, and they were all giving the wrong answer. What happened next was astonishing. Even though the participants knew the correct answer, the majority of them conformed to the group's incorrect answer, just to avoid standing out. So, what does this tell us about human psychology? Well, for one thing, it shows just how powerful social norms can be. When we're surrounded by people who are all thinking or behaving in a certain way, it's incredibly hard to resist the urge to fit in. And that's because our brains are wired to respond to social cues and to avoid social rejection at all costs. But it also highlights the importance of critical thinking and being willing to question the status quo. Another theory that's relevant here is social identity theory. This suggests that our sense of self is closely tied to the groups we belong to, and that when we conform to group norms, we're actually reinforcing our own identity. It's a way of saying, hey, I'm one of you guys, and I belong here. But the problem is, when we do this, we start to lose sight of our own individuality and our own values and principles. I want to share with you a personal story that really illustrates the consequences of succumbing to social pressure. When I was in high school, I was part of a close-knit group of friends, and we all tended to do the same things, listen to the same music, and wear the same clothes. But one day, I started to develop a passion for photography, and I realized that it wasn't something that any of my friends were interested in. At first, I was hesitant to pursue it, because I didn't want to stand out from the crowd or be seen as different. But eventually, I realized that this was something that truly made me happy, and that I couldn't let the opinions of others hold me back. Looking back on that experience, I realized just how close I came to letting social pressure hold me back from something that truly mattered to me. And that's a really scary thought, because if I had given into that pressure, who knows what opportunities I might have missed out on. The truth is, when we conform to social norms, we're not just conforming to what others think we should be doing, we're also conforming to our own limited perceptions of what's possible. So, what can we take away from all of this? Well, for one thing, it's clear that social pressure is a force to be reckoned with, and one that can have some pretty negative consequences. But it's also clear that by developing our critical thinking skills and being willing to question the status quo, we can start to resist that pressure and forge our own paths in life. Remember, self-awareness is key here. Being aware of our own biases and our own tendencies to conform is the first step in breaking free from the chains of social pressure. Thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever experienced social pressure in your own life? How did you handle it? Also, if you want to learn more about the psychology of conformity, be sure to check out my video on groupthink and the power of social influence.